What's going on? It's Ty the TV Guy, and today I'm coming at you with my top 10 characters from the Netflix original series Ozark. Ozark remains one of my favorite shows with some of my favorite characters, so I'm really excited to dive into this. At number 10, I have Jacob Snell, a very powerful person in the Ozark area, and Marty and Wendy feel his presence as soon as they move in nearby. He's kind of pressuring them to do certain things and to not do certain things, I guess you could say. Him and his wife, Darlene, kind of run the area, so to speak, and they didn't like this new person trying to gain power in their territory. And when it comes down to it, him and Darlene just did a lot of shady things. But when it comes down to it, I did find him to be an interesting character and a character that grew on me as the show went on. I started to think maybe he was just kind of a prideful person that maybe wasn't too bad, and Darlene was really the one that had these crazy ideas that pushed things way too far. And obviously, I hope you've seen this if you're watching, but he does die and Darlene does kill him, and I felt bad for him in the moment. But yeah, he had an interesting death, an interesting introduction, and they did interesting things while he was alive. So to me, that warrants him being in the 10 spot. At number 9, I have Wyatt Langmore, who I think undoubtedly undergoes the most drastic change of any of these characters. He grows up in the 2 trailers with his Langmore family, but by the end of the series, he's bunking it up and dating or married to, I kind of forget, but he is with Darlene, which is a crazy twist. They quite clearly have an intimate relationship and are like raising a kid together, oddly enough. The kid from the pastor that really his life went off the rails. It was the pastor that Marty tried to get involved with and ultimately kind of ruined things for him directly, but not intentionally. But yeah, Wyatt was always nice, always a comforting friend for Charlotte early on in the show. The main thing I disliked about him is how he turned his back on Ruth for so long in the later seasons. I thought his acting was pretty decent, and all in all, just a decently enjoyable character, so he slides in at my 9 slot. At number 8, I have Buddy, an old man with really no cares in the world because he knows he is going to pass soon. And he grows a surprisingly great relationship with Jonah Bird, the son of the family. And at his funeral, where Jonah speaks about him, is really a turning point for Jonah and where I started to like him a lot more as a character, I feel. Buddy didn't get too much screen time, but when he did, he always put a slight smile on your face. At number 7, I have Omar Navarro, and of course, this isn't based on likability. I didn't like Omar Navarro's character, but do I think the acting was spectacular, and do I think the villains or the antagonists in this show are part of what made it so fantastic? Absolutely. I think Omar and his nephew were really good as the villains and the head of the drug cartel. I do prefer Omar's time when he was in charge, though, and he really just gave a believable performance at all times. For example, I think when Marty and Wendy went to visit him in jail, if he wasn't in those shackles at some points, I really think he would have just gone and ripped their heads off. I feel that his presence contributed to making their circumstances feel even more dire than they were previously. At number 6, I have Helen, the assistant to Omar Navarro. And like so many other characters in this show, she suffers a tragic, instant, horrific death. But of all the side characters in the show, they honestly explore her personal life probably the most. I found it interesting that she didn't tell her daughter anything about what she did. She tried to keep it all a complete secret. And I think it was a common theme, not only with the Bird family, but with her, that clearly this wasn't necessarily the line of work they were hoping to get into all their life or something. They kind of fell into it, and they didn't want it to poison the people around them. They wanted their kids to be protected from this, but at some point, there's nothing you can do to protect them from this dreadful thing that you've got involved in. She puts a lot of pressure on the Bird family, and a lot of well-written drama surrounds her presence, I feel. At number 5, I actually have Wendy Bird. Now, I think the acting is really great. Just the character is just so dang unlikable. She is just the most deceptive, cold, unrelenting that I have ever seen in my life. It got to a point in season 3 and season 4 when I was like, I literally cannot watch this woman anymore. She is despicable. Obviously, that is from a fan's perspective, and I think we're supposed to feel that way about Wendy a lot of times. Of course, there's a moment here and there where you feel for her. Certain things happened in her life that maybe led her to this point, and why she's power hungry and why she's so greedy. But when it comes down to it, she is annoyingly power hungry and greedy. She did cheat on the GOAT Marty Bird and seems to have no remorse about it, or very little. And at multiple points in the show, basically completely blames Marty for all of this, as if she didn't agree to go into it with him, even though they show the flashback of their conversation, and she seemed to be pretty all right with the deal at the time. It's hard for me to say any good words about Wendy because, once again, I did find her as an extremely unlikable character, but obviously a tremendous performance, an extremely well written character. And I liked seeing the dynamics of her relationship with Marty and how at times it seemed like they were operating as husband and wife. Sometimes they were operating as business partners, sometimes as just parents, sometimes as all three, sometimes as none of them. I liked seeing how her kids kind of turned on her or both of them at times, and really just her role in trying to build up their enterprise within the Ozarks. It was interesting to see her interject herself into all that while claiming that she didn't want to be involved in to begin with. She was a very complex, very unlikable, but very high quality character, in my opinion. At number 4, I have her son, Jonah Bird. I didn't like him that much in the opening season, but after that, I grew to love the kid. He's a bit eccentric, a bit quiet, a bit reserved, but I loved a lot of the things that he stood for. It seemed like he had one of the best moral compasses of any of the characters on the show. And of course, he made questionable decisions like the rest of them at times. He was kind of trigger happy, pulling his gun out really when there was any conflict. I know that happened multiple times, but I think he was just a scared kid who wasn't afraid to defend himself in the face of what his parents have unfortunately thrown him into the middle of. And it's interesting how both him and Charlotte go through their stages where one of them is kind of defending their parents and the other one is simultaneously turning on them. And his happens after Charlotte, I believe. And he really seems to grow to think that his parents are nasty people that are up to no good. I liked his relationship with Buddy. I liked his relationship with Ben. Unfortunately, both got cut short in the midst of the craziness that unfolded in the Ozarks. At number 3, I have Ben, and I will die on this hill. I know he was only in season 3 for about 8 of the 10 episodes, but the impact that he had on this show cannot be calculated, cannot be measured. He bursted on the scene and became the heartbeat of the show so fast, I feel. He had an interesting backstory. He had interesting mental health problems that ultimately led to his very, very unfortunate and tragic demise. But I think one of his most important contributions was the meaning that he gave to Ruth, and for once, Ruth actually seemed happy. Of course, Ruth is one of the most interesting characters and the most important character in the show, maybe, and she just had such a struggle every single day, every single year of her life, and Ben really seemed to inject some happiness and some fulfillment into her life. The acting by whoever played Ben, I don't know his name off the top of my head, but it was tremendous. I would love to see him in something else. Not really familiar with him outside of Ozark, but yeah, great performance. I loved the addition of his character in season 3. It was a great mix-up, and his death had me shook. Even Wendy's acting after she had to basically turn on him and turn him in to keep her family safe. It was so heartbreaking all around. That season 3 was perfection, one of my favorite seasons of television, and it's largely because of him and the emotional factors combined with the practical factors that he brings to the table because of his mental health issues and really how that affects the whole very delicate situation that they're standing on. I think this should be everybody's top 2. You know the 2 characters that are left. But at number 2, I'm going with Ruth Langmore. Ruth is often the heartbeat of the show. She's been poor basically her whole life, coming from not the best family. This family has a poor reputation around town and is really just looked down upon because of her last name. Even though at first she is kind of taking advantage of Marty, or attempting to at least, she grows to become a respectable worker and someone that is working hard to earn her money and is trying to outgrow the stereotypes associated with the Langmore last name. And I think she successfully does so. And she just has a lot of savage moments, and moments where she sticks up for the people that she cares about. And I love her relationship with Marty. She kills her own blood because she knows that what they're doing to go kill Marty is wrong. And it's just so heartbreaking that Marty cares so much about her and he can't save her in season 4. A lot of people didn't like the decision that they made regarding her living or dying. I'm okay with it. I thought the scene was pretty good. Not spectacular, but I enjoyed how they wrapped up the show. And yeah, Ruth just had a heart of gold, and she really just had determination to protect hers and to do what was right. Just because she was from an unfortunate upbringing doesn't mean she was a bad person, doesn't mean she couldn't do great things in this world. And she started to prove that before her life was unfortunately cut too short. At number one, I have who I call the GOAT. I only refer to him as the GOAT usually, but so you know who I'm talking about. Marty Byrde, spectacular character, spectacularly written. Uh, in my opinion, always tries to do what's right for his family. Once he gets them into this situation, it was a poor choice, but he thought they could use the extra money and he thought they could scrape by and never have to come face to face with any of these evil, wicked people. And of course he was wrong, but he just goes to hell and back like 10 times throughout this show, and somehow he makes it through. And as far as we know, when the series ends, he keeps his family alive as well. So in that sense, he kind of achieves what he set out to do when he went to the Ozarks, which is basically survive and keep my family alive. But what he goes through once he's in the Ozarks, he knows that he has caused so much death and destruction, or at least this situation has. I'm not saying it's all his fault. Obviously, I don't think it is, because I think he's the GOAT. Ruth, someone he has grown to care about so much, he was the first one to really give her an opportunity and believe in her. But at the same time, him coming into her life, even though she may have still been, kind of being lazy and not trying to get up and build a meaningful life for herself, ultimately his presence is what indirectly / kind of directly led to her getting killed. And just watching him sit at the table in the last episode of season 4, he's just devastated that he could do nothing to save her. But Marty is just a super intelligent person, a person that isn't the most in touch with his emotions, which makes the moments where he does break down and get emotional even more rewarding for me as a viewer. One example of that is when he has to kill the pastor that I referenced earlier, because the pastor was basically just psycho at that point, and he had to kill him with his own hands. And that really hurt Marty. He was completely devastated. He was going nuts after that happened. And it was a very powerful scene. And I thought there was kind of a contrast between him and Wendy. As the series continued to go on, it seemed like he was getting more and more tired of all of this crap. Whereas, yes, I think Wendy would choose to just go back to her regular life, but she honestly seemed to relish in some of the opportunity to gain power at points, whereas Marty genuinely seemed to be trying to figure out a way to just get them away. He wanted to fly them to a faraway place where nobody would ever find them under new made-up names. He tried to help them escape multiple times, but Wendy thought the better option was always to stay in the Ozarks and figure it out there and become this untouchable family of power. It was very, very interesting, but I always thought Marty proposed the most logical solutions to all of their issues in the Ozarks, and I honestly think that deep down he was a great guy. Of course, he was confused. He made a lot of misguided decisions at points, but a guy who I think genuinely loved and cared about his family and never wanted any of this to happen and tried his best to reverse it. But the message of this show, I feel, is that once you get yourself involved in something like this, there is no turning back. You are trapped for life, and it's going to be a lifelong struggle. And unfortunately, he had to learn that the hard way, and he went through so much. Very mentally strong character, and yeah, I love him. He's my favorite character in Ozark. Thank you for watching my top 10 characters in Ozark video. Please leave your thoughts down in the comments. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. I'll have more content on Ozark and other shows coming in the near future. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.